Hello and welcome to the Crystal Palace podcast. I'm Alfonso Greenbrook and today pod 14 I'll be looking at the result of Leicester City by bringing you my match review, player rankings and my man of the match. As well as this, I'm also going to bring you an exclusive interview with Alan Pardew and Johan Cabaye after the game, so let's begin. A late goal from Johan Cabaye wasn't enough to give Palace anything from their trip to Leicester City's King Power Stadium, as the Premier League champions capitalised on the Eagles' loss of momentum to take all 3 points. Crystal Palace visited the home of the champions on the back of one defeat in 6 matches, but manager Alan Pardew was forced into one change, with Jason Bunchen missing out through injury. Early danger for the visitors saw Mandanda give the ball away to Okazaki, and he tried to lob the keeper but he went well wide of the target in an early let-off. Palace also on the attack early on saw Johan Cabaye strike a shot goalwards from distance, but it curled just wide of Cassis Michael's goal. On 13 minutes, Christian Benteke nearly added to his Palace account when he got off on the end of a cross from Martin Kelly, but saw his header strike the crossbar with the keeper beaten, but from the rebound the ball was cleared. Palace started the game well, and just a minute later Cabaye was found by Wilfried Zaha in space down the left hand side, and the French international put the ball back into the box, but no one was there to get on the end of his low cross. At the hour mark, after some pressure from Leicester, they forced a couple of corners and the best chance fell to Islam Salami, who put a header well wide of Mandanda's goal from a Christian Fuchs set piece. Riyad Mahrez's powerful left-footed shot took a deflection of Okazaki's head from close range, but went wide of Palace's goal, as the champions finished the half strong in possession. The breakthrough came 3 minutes before the break, as Musa fired home past Mandanda from just inside the Palace box, after collecting a pass from Salami, as the home side took the lead in the closing stages of the half. That lead was very nearly extended as the second half got underway, as Danny Simpson's cross was perfectly met by Salami with his head, but he put the ball into the side netting. Good combination play from the midfield as Joe Ledley and Cabaye forced a chance, as Alan Pardew's men tried to get back into the game, but the French international ended the move by putting his shot over the bar. The champions pushed on with some great vocal support from their sellout crowd, put together some sustained pressure in the early stages of the half, and Danny Drinkwater was picked out on the edge of the box, but saw his shot deflect behind. It was not long before the second goal did come though. Danny Drinkwater's cross was cut out by Damien Delaney, but a loose ball fell to Okazaki, who made no mistake in firing home the second goal of the afternoon, into the corner of the net from outside the box. Palace soon had a chance to get back into the match, as Wilfried Zaha found himself with an opportunity, but his effort was parried out for a corner by Schmeichel. 2 chances from the bench for the visitors, as Chung Lee and Fraser Campbell came on, and soon after it was again Schmeichel who denied Palace. He was on hand to get to the ground to push wide a shot with his legs from Cabaye. From the resulting corner, Benteke had a header cleared off the line by Simpson. A shot from just outside the box from Fuchs with 11 minutes to go, as he collected the ball across the box and fired home to confirm Leicester remained unbeaten at home since September 2015. Johan Cabaye pulled one back for the Eagles with 5 minutes of the 90 remaining, meeting a low cross for Wilfried Zaha with a first-time effort, gliding it beyond the diving Schmeichel, but it was really too late to threaten the home side's lead. With a 3-1 scoreline that flattered Leicester City a little, Crystal Palace faltered again, thanks in part to us being wasteful in front of goal and having a porous defence. Whilst the first and last 20 minutes of the encounter saw Palace push for goals, chances weren't taken whilst the Premier League champions were ruthless with theirs. Now for some positives from the game. Palace started well, which had been the main concern following the West Ham defeat, ending the match with 23 shots, 6 more than Leicester, and edged their opponents in possession and territory. This was mainly thanks to Wilfried Zaha being a creative force on the wing for Palace and assisted Johan Cabaye, who also had a decent game offensively and defensively, taking control of the midfield and scoring late in the tie. Now for some negatives from the game. Palace's dominance in the first 20 minutes prompted Leicester to make a tactical change, which saw Riyad Mahrez take a more central position, a move which Alan Pardew didn't react to soon enough. The remainder of the half saw Leicester push for a goal, and thanks to careless defending they got it. Palace aren't being helped by injuries, with Scott Dann and Jason Puncheon the crucial omissions this week, but the lack of pragmatism when it comes to selection is concerning. Crystal Palace were well beaten as they crashed to a 3-1 defeat against Leicester City on Saturday afternoon. A game which was even and could have gone either way was the third defeat in a row against the Premier League champions, who won 1-0 home and away against the Eagles last season on their way to the title. A better team performance first half, unlike the game against West Ham, but once again defending let us down. We cannot underestimate missing Dan, Puncheon and S1E, who'd normally start but for injury, but regardless, Zaha and Cabaye impressed. The one thing about Palace though, we have great character and rarely do let our heads drop. But what do we learn from the game at the King Power Stadium? Here are 5 things we picked up. Number 1. Mandanda needs to be careful. Whilst Palace fans are loving having the Frenchman in between the sticks, there was warning signs early on of what can happen when it goes wrong. He is clearly a good footballer as well as a good keeper, but he passed the ball straight to Okazaki and was fortunate to get away with it, with the forward chipping just wide. To his credit, Mandanda didn't let this affect him and he remained confident for the rest of the game in possession, also making a number of notable saves. Number 2. It was a good battle on and off the pitch. Palace certainly got stuck in at the home of the champions, and the game was a good battle for much of the game. But it was also a good battle of the voices in the stands, with Palace fans given as good as they've got from the noisy home support. Number 3. The wait goes on. Crystal Palace fans have once again been bemoaning about the lack of clean sheets in the league, with Leicester prolonging that run to 14 games for the Eagles. The Palace supporters were quick to post on Twitter after the game, saying that they were sick of conceding. Number 4. Palace need to produce a complete performance for 90 minutes. It was competitive in the first half, but Palace were overrun early in the second half and didn't seem to have the answer as Leicester controlled the game with greater sharpness and impetus in the second half. Pardew did bring on Fraser Campbell, Chong Lee and Zeki Fries, and there was a change in tempo with Palace creating several chances, but it didn't change the outcome, despite Yohan Cabaye's late goal. Number 5. Not packing a punch. Jason Puncheon was missing from the matchday squad with an injury, and he was missed. Although Palace created chances, his calmness on the ball and creativity would have been useful to try and unlock the Leicester defence. Wilfried Zaha and Cabaye looked the most likely of the visitors though, and combined superbly for Palace's goal. So now you've heard the match review, we're now going to move on to the player rankings, but before we start with that, don't forget to follow us across social media on Twitter and Facebook at eCrystalPalace for all the latest news. And for all you Facebook users out there, don't forget to check out our Facebook group so you can join in with the latest discussions, read the latest news and post your own opinion. So like I said there, if you do want to get in contact with us and you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, do drop a comment below the video on YouTube of what you thought about the game, whether you agree with my opinion and just anything else you want to say about the game. And obviously if you do want to contact us via social media instead, then do tweet us or comment on our Facebook page, which you can find at eCrystalPalace. And obviously one of the other ways to contact us on Facebook is through and via the Facebook group, which I would highly recommend you joining, because on there after the game loads of fans go on there, post their own opinion, and obviously that adds a little bit more discussion so fans can discuss whether they agree with each other and what ultimately they thought of the game. And obviously on all of these accounts we post the latest news, so if you do want to keep up to date with everything that's happening with Palace, then certainly these groups and accounts are the places to go. And obviously a few weeks ago I set a challenge to a few of the listeners that see whether you could list 11 players plus the substitutions and give them your own ratings from 1 to 10, and no one's done it yet, but I want to see someone do it, so I can see how their opinion on the player rankings relates back to mine. So obviously if you do want to do it, do drop a comment below the video on YouTube giving each of the players from the starting 11 and the subs a rating from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, so we can compare our opinions and see whether we thought all of the players had the similar performances to what we saw. Well, obviously we're going to start in goal with Steve Mandanda, who I am going to give a 6. Arguably Mandanda's first poor game for the side. He should have done better with at least one of the goals, and his misplaced clearance early in the first half nearly gifted Okazaki another. He dominated the air and defended well of corners, however his distribution was his biggest asset, but it still wasn't perfect. So obviously starting with Steve Mandanda, it was probably his first poor game for Palace. And, you know, the sort of few games he started for us, so he's been playing for us quite a long time now. The first few games he was showing his class. He was showing why he was a top class keeper, why he was a brilliant asset to the team. But this game, you know, it was one of his poor performances. He didn't have a very good game indeed. And to be honest, we conceded 3 goals. The first time this season we've conceded 3 goals. And, you know, he could have done better with at least 1 or 2 of them. You know, he did dive for the third one, which was a brilliant strike by Fuchs. He did dive to it, but maybe if he timed his dive better and got his hand out, he would have been able to do that. And the same goes for the other 2 goals we conceded. You know, yes, he was moaning at the defence because they weren't marking the players close enough. And yes, that's an issue. But at the end of the day, the goalkeeper, you can't just stand there and wait for your defenders to do the work. You've got to try and dive. And yes, he did try and dive for Fuchs' lovely strike, but the other 2 goals, he could have tried to at least dive for them to try and get a hand to him. And yes, they were 3 brilliantly taken goals from Leicester City, but certainly the skill we know that Mandanda's got, he should be trying to save them. And obviously, I'm not saying he's a bad keeper, he just had one off game, and players have off games, and this was a clear example. You know, the last sort of 5 games, Mandanda, he's been absolute class, almost world class. You know, the fact that the way he put himself out in the game, let's say. But obviously, this wasn't the best game, and one of the things he done early in the first half, I think it was the first minute, he misplaced the clearance. Obviously, we're passing the ball round the back like you do. Every team's start from the back. You know, he tried to clear it. It was a good clearance, a very strong clearance. Okazaki managed to intercept it, tried to go on with him, tried to chip the keeper, because obviously Mandanda, from the clearance, he was away from the goal line. But obviously Okazaki shot it over, so he was a bit lucky there. But, you know, we know that his clearances and his distribution are good, so we can't really fault him for that. It was just one mistake, and every keeper's done it. You know, Alex McCarthy, when he was at us before he left for Southampton, he'd done that last season against Liverpool. He wasn't so lucky that the player missed, but, you know, players, goalkeepers especially, do make mistakes ever so often, whether it be an offset kick or whether it be like that, a kick or clearance which has been intercepted by a player. But other than that, you know, other than them few shaky bits, which meant he didn't have a very good game, he had quite a poor game. He did have some good attributes about his game. He defended well off corners, you know, made himself big, caught a few of them, punched some of them away. And yes, one of them we did concede from, but that was not directly from the corner. That was, the ball was cleared out from the corner, defended very well by Benteke, who, you know, Mandanda made sure he's positioned right. Benteke cleared the ball, and then obviously the thunder shot from Fuchs went into the corner. So we can't really blame him for not defending that corner very well, but throughout the game he did do it very well. And like I said, I've touched on it already, his biggest asset, like always, was his distribution. Yes, he had a very poor game, but his distribution was still very good. You know, when he got the ball, he wouldn't try and wait for players to run forward, he'd try and release the ball quickly, and on a few occasions that set the likes of Townsend and Zaha off down the wings so we could start up a counter-attack. So, you know, that asset was very good to us because we did have a very good attacking performance, and I think that was crucial to it, because his distribution, his fast distribution to get the ball to these fast wingers, was key to us getting through. And obviously, like I said, it wasn't the best performance, and the distribution, yes, it was his best asset, but it wasn't perfect. You know, a clear example of that is when he cleared the ball to Okazaki. But all in all, Mandanda's first poor game for Palace, but certainly still showed glimpses of why he's a top class keeper. Now to move on to the back 4, obviously containing Joe Ward, James Tompkin, Damien Delaney and Martin Kelly. So starting with Joe Ward, who I am going to give a 5. It's fair to say that Palace's fullbacks are being asked to carry out tactics they're not comfortable with, but their lack of composure when under pressure is problematic. It's little surprise that much of Leicester's attacking threat came down both wings. He got beaten for pace a couple of times, but apart from that, it was a satisfactory performance. So obviously Joe Ward here, I've given him a 5 because it weren't really his best game, and you know, the last few games he's been performing very well, and this one was a bit under par of his sort of performances of late. And to be honest, I can understand why he hasn't been performing very well, because he's been asked to carry out tactics that are not really comfortable for him. But in saying that, you know, they're professional players, they need to be able to have composure, you know, when changing tactics. And obviously Joe Ward in this instance didn't have it very well. And to be honest, when he was under pressure, obviously Leicester on the counter-attack got very fast players up front, the likes of Mahrez, Musa, very fast players coming running at him. He didn't really, you know, he couldn't really cope with the pressure because he let them get past on a few occasions. He wasn't able to block the crosses like he was used to, and he did miss a few tackles as well. And to be honest, it's not surprising, like I said, that Leicester's attack came from the wings because they got fast players bolting down the wings, and ultimately that led to us, we've got Joe Ward and Kelly on these flanks, so they're not really the fastest players, so they struggled a bit to cope with it. And like I said, he got beaten for pace a couple of times, but we can understand that Joe Ward isn't really the fastest player. But other than that, it was a satisfactory performance from him. He done things right throughout the game, made a few interceptions, a few tackles, a few blocks, them sort of things. But all in all, it wasn't really the best game from Ward. And I did personally think he had an alright game, one of the better plays throughout the game. But that was only in sort of glimpses throughout the game. He wasn't consistent throughout the game. He did have bits of through the game where he got forward a few occasions, linked up well with the wingers. But as a whole game, he went missing for quite a lot of the game. And, he didn't really feel confident in the game. And I will touch on it again. I think the reason that the fullbacks weren't performing very well is the fact that they are being asked to carry out tactics they're not comfortable with. And if we want to carry on with this sort of formation where the fullbacks push forward, maybe we should try and adapt to a sort of, let's say, a 4-3 formation with whatever we're going to do up front, whether it be the 3-4-3 formation, or whether we adapt something slightly different. But certainly, I think that, if we are going to carry on with this tactics with them pushing forward a bit more, maybe we should try and change it just a little bit to try and cope with the pressure that much. But in saying that, it wasn't the best performance from Joe Ward, but certainly it was an alright performance. Obviously, now to move on to the two centre-backs, Damien Delaney and James Tompkins. And I'm going to start with James Tompkins, who I'm going to give a 6. With Dan out of the side because of injury, defensive leadership must come from Tompkins and his teammate Damien Delaney. Neither seemed to provide it. Didn't do much wrong for the majority, but the first goal he doesn't seem to throw his body in the way of the shot. Defensively, out of the two, Tompkins had the better game. So obviously here I've just touched a little bit on the leadership here, and obviously Damien Delaney did take the captain's armband for this game, and he did come on the side very well. But I think when you've got two players like this who are very good leaders, obviously Tompkins and Delaney, one of them is got to take the leadership, and neither of them did take the leadership very well, and neither of them seemed to provide that sort of knowledge to the team and the fact that they were able to command the side very well. But in saying that, he didn't do much wrong for the majority of the game. He made superb interceptions throughout the game, made crucial tackles and blocks throughout the game. But in saying that, talking about interceptions, for I think it was Leicester's first goal, he didn't put his body on the line, and for the third goal as well. So the first and second goal, first and third goal, James Tompkins didn't really put his body on the line. And, he didn't get in the way of the shot. So if he had moved over a few inches and just taken a little wound to the chest by getting hit with the ball, and that way we wouldn't have conceded as many goals. But defensively, he was the better player out of the two. Yes, Damien Delaney made interceptions, blocks and tackles, but as a whole, Tompkins done that to a little bit higher standard, because there were some important interceptions, tackles and blocks that he made throughout the game that ultimately kept us in the game. But to be honest, with Dan being out the squad, it's going to be hard because we've lost one of our better players. But, I think Tompkins has come up to the standard. He's, taken his place very well. And I personally think that when Dan comes back from injury, Tompkins is probably the person who's going to, partner him very well, because unlike Damien Delaney, Tompkins, one of the main things that Tompkins has better than Delaney is his distribution. Yes, Delaney, he hoofs the ball up quite a lot, whereas Tompkins and Dan, they're very similar in the fact that they will try and work from the back, and rather than just crossing the ball forward and putting long balls into the box, they'll try and work around it, trying to make space by running into the midfield and then passing off the ball. So he done that in the game against Leicester, making sure because he, instead of chipping the ball forward, he made his way through the midfield, he was able to find passes better, and ultimately led to us having a much better game. But, he did have an alright game. He was the best defender out of the four defenders, but, he lacked the leadership which we need from this side, considering we've lost our captain. And like I said, he should have put his body on the line. Leicester, they've had a shot from outside the box. He could see it coming. He turned his head away and moved his body out of the way. But if he had sort of just moved over slightly and just taken that hit, because it was quite near the end of the game, then we wouldn't have conceded them goals. But in saying that, it was a very good defensive and sort of offensive, in the fact of going forward and making space, performance from James Tompkins. Now to move on to the captain, Damien Delaney, who I'm going to give a 5. Distribution is still a major problem, and the instance on hoisting up the ball to Christian Benteke didn't help Palace retain possession during Leicester's first half resurgence. had a chance to score from a header which hit the side netting. So I did touch a bit there on James Tompkins, is the distribution, and the fact that James Tompkins has better distribution than Damien Delaney, because when Tompkins has the ball, he'll start playing from the back and try and find a pass to the midfield, who then could supply the attackers rather than putting long balls in the box. And that's what Damien Delaney did. He kept putting long balls into the box, which admittedly some of them did come off and we were able to hold up the ball, but the majority of them, you know, they just got hoisted up, got defended away by Leicester, and ultimately that led to us not having a much possession. But in saying that, you know, we know Benteke is good in the air, so it's good that we're getting balls into him, but sometimes we just got to leave that to the wingers, because sometimes the balls from the back line getting, you know, hoofed up the field are going to get defended away. And that was the main problem with Delaney's game. If he had just done what Tompkins done and just passed the ball away rather than hoofing it, we probably would have had more possession and would have been able to build up more and get more chances into the box. But, you know, in saying that, like I said with Tompkins, he made crucial interceptions, blocks, tackles throughout the game, and, you know, ultimately led to us dominating for the first sort of 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes, and he was crucial to that. But he did have a chance to score, you know. However, we do know that Damien Delaney is very good in the air. Obviously, whipped in a corner, he got his head on it, and it hit the side net. And so, you know, he's showing what he can do offensively, but, you know, for the majority of the games, he needs to show what he's got defensively, and that needs to include having better distribution. But in saying that, you know, he, as the captain, he still did command the side very well. And ultimately, when we were 3-0 down, he did up the morale of the team to make sure we can go out and at least get one goal, which we did. Cabaye with the goal there, so we kept up the morale of the side, making sure that we would keep going till the end, and ultimately that led to us getting a late goal. But, you know, not the best performance from the captain, but certainly with the tackles and blocks, he's showing his class and experience. Obviously, moving on to the final player, the left back Martin Kelly, who I'm going to give a 5. Laboured against Mahrez and Musa and was caught in possession a few times. As a right-footed player, it's understandable that he struggles against talented wingers. Although he did offer one moment going forward, which was a great cross for Christian Benteke to head against the crossbar, but apart from that there was nothing else which stood out. Obviously, Martin Kelly, he isn't the fastest player in the world, and he's right-footed playing on as left-back, so we can understand why he struggled and got caught in possession against the likes of Mahrez and Musa, who are very fast players. And it is understandable why he struggled, and that's why I think he struggled throughout the game and didn't really have the best game, because, you know, he wasn't his normal self in the fact that he was making blocks, tackles, he was losing possession quite a lot, he was getting run past quite a lot, and, you know, ultimately that's why he got subbed off in the game, because he didn't really have the best of impact which he would like to have had. But in saying that, you know, defensively he wasn't too good, but the time he was on the pitch, he was a lot better going forward. And that's talking, like I said with Joe Ward, talking about the sort of tactics that the fullbacks have been told to do, is try and go forward as much as possible. And I think in this game, Martin Kelly fitted the more attacking role better, because he was better attacking offensively than he was defensively. And obviously the one opportunity he had going forward, he got forward, putting a lovely decent cross in for Christian Benteke. Benteke, like we always, rose above all of the players, headed it goalwards, and it hit the crossbar. So if that had gone in, would have been a lovely assist for Kelly. And to be honest, that was the only bit of sort of outstanding or one moment he had going forward. You know, other than that, he was very poor throughout the game, and that's why he got substituted. And I think I've said this in the past, I think Martin Kelly is a good squad rotation player, a player who can come in when there's injuries. But I think we're seeing now that when he's sort of getting a run of 4 or 5 games, you can see he's getting a bit tired. So hopefully when I think Zeki Fryer should get a chance, when he gets a chance, or when Papa Swai gets a chance, I think Martin Kelly will go back onto the bench and sort of begin or start again with that squad rotation player and come in when we need him, and hopefully he can be much better when he's been fresh, he's come off the bench, and you know, help us out. But obviously, like I said, apart from that lovely cross for Benteke which hit the crossbar, you know, there was nothing else of class from him, and we know he can do it. We know he's a very good defender, you know, and we know he's good offensively, but in this game he didn't really show much defensively and got caught out quite a lot of times. But going forward, in the time he was on the pitch, he done very well. So now to move on to the midfield three, which consisted of Joe Ledley, James McArthur, and also Yohan Cabaye. So obviously, there was a bit of debate this game and the games in the weeks leading up to this game about the formation and which formation Palace actually used. And looking back at this game, I think we continue to use the 4-3-3 formation. And the reason I think this is very good is obviously you've got your 4 defenders, you've got your 3 midfielders, and you've got your 3 attackers, which include the wingers. and the striker. So the reason I think that this formation works really well is because it gives us a nice balance in the team. Obviously, you've got defenders, you've got your midfielders who are, you know, into switching, let's say, with each other. They're switching around throughout the game, giving cover to the back line, which means they've got more support. And then also, you know, you've got your midfield players, your three midfield players supporting the three attacking players. So if such, you've got three players in the midfield supporting each one of the attacking players. But obviously, like I said, you know, it gives the defence much more cover. But in saying that, in this game, it didn't really work that well. Obviously, in past games, this sort of formation has meant that one player would drop really, really deep. And in this case, it was Joe Ledley. But in this game, it didn't really work very well because Leicester, with their fast players, were able to get past our players. Obviously, the midfield normally get more support. Obviously, it means the defenders can supply the ball to the midfielders, and then they can supply the ball to the strikers. And that worked really well throughout the game, because we had 55% of possession, which is very high for us. We're playing this formation allows us to have more of the ball, and that meant that when the midfielders had the ball given to them by the midfielders, it meant that they were able to give the attack more support. And if you're supplying the midfielders, who are the main people going to be supplying your attacking threats, who are going to score the goals, then there's something right. And that ultimately led to us having 23 shots on target, and I think that's quite a lot, you know, considering the last few weeks we haven't really had that many shots on target. But in this game, because of this formation, because it gave the players more support and the attacking players more service, it meant that we were able to get shots on goal, and ultimately that led to us dominating for quite a lot of the game. But obviously in the midfield, like I said, we've got Joe Ledley, James McArthur and Yohan Cabaye. Obviously starting with Joe Ledley, he was the deepest player of all of the players in the field, but I am going to give him a 5. A few neat passes here and there, but went missing for the majority of the game. Doesn't look entirely fit and seemed to be delayed in his decision making, which slowed the play down. Missed tackles didn't help him either. So obviously Joe Ledley, I've given him a 5 because he didn't really have the best performance defensively or offensively, in the fact that he was able to supply the strikers. But he did make a few lovely passes here and there, you know, to try and set up, you know, supplying the attackers, like I've said. And he fitted the game well, play very well. And that's why I like this formation, because it allows players who are defensive or offensive to link up well with each other, to help each other and supply each other. And Joe Ledley done that very well. You know, he had a few neat passes here and there in the first 20 minutes, which led to us dominating the game. But he did go missing for the majority of the game. You know, where he was playing so deep, it was almost like it was a 5-back formation, because he was playing so deep. He went missing for the majority of the game, because as a midfielder, you want to be supplying chances, but because he dropped so deep, he didn't have the opportunity to, which meant he went missing for the game. And he doesn't look entirely fit, and I don't know whether that's just a knock-on effect for playing 2 games for Wales during the international break, or whether it's just he deserves a rest, because, you know, he's been playing the majority of the season. But I think now, if Punchin comes back from injury, I'm sure that he'll probably go in the side. Joe Ledley will be dropped, and then Punchin will go in a sort of attacking and defensive role. But certainly, you know, he was a bit slow in his reactions as well. You know, yes, he doesn't look fit, but also the fact that he's taking time with the ball led to us, you know, losing possession quite a lot, because he's taking his time, got the ball at his feet, but by the time he looks for the pass or thinks he's found a pass or a shot, you know, the players are pressing on him, and he has to lose possession. So that didn't really help him as well, and it slowed us down. You know, we want to play high tempo football, passing the ball around quite a lot, getting forward as much as we can, ticky-tacky passing, but because he took so long to make decisions throughout the game, it slowed the game as well. And he did have a few missed tackles here and there. You know, one of Leicester's goals, there was a little I think Delaney originally went into the tackle, he missed it, so Tompkins went in there and he missed the tackle as well. And then you've got Joe Ledley coming in, he missed the tackle as well, and he's meant to be the one that making sure that if the defenders miss a tackle, he's the one meant to be covering for them. But on that occasion he didn't, which meant that Musa could get the ball and he scored. So that didn't really help either. But in saying that, you know, as a midfielder, you want to be passing the ball, and he'd done that very well. But other than the passing throughout the game, he didn't really offer anything else to the team, because he looked really tired and he was very slow in the way he played. But obviously, moving on to a slightly better midfield player in James McArthur, who I'm going to give a 6. A quiet performance again from the usually energetic man who has had much better games. With Leicester changing their tactics in the first half, McArthur was put under increasing pressure. However, he did put himself about and played the anchor role, but didn't have a chance to get forward and have a threat on goal. So obviously James McArthur, we know he's normally a very energetic player in the fact that he plays a very high press game, you know, putting pressure on players. But in this game, he had a very quiet game. And in saying that, it wasn't his worst performance, because he's had a lot better games, but it certainly wasn't his worst performance. So it's a sort of average performance, and that's why I've given him a 6, because he done things quite well. And obviously Leicester did change their tactics after the first 20 minutes when Palace were dominating, and that ultimately led to a change in the way Palace played, and he was put under increasing pressure, because obviously Mahrez played sort of more inside, more narrow, let's say, and McArthur was the one who had to cope with that. And to be honest, he was put under the pressure. He coped with it sort of, but on a few occasions he couldn't really cope with the pace of Musa and the likes of Mahrez, and ultimately that led to us, giving the ball away quite a lot. But in saying that, he did play the anchor role very well, with Ledley not playing too well, or not playing too well, I suppose. He had to drop in that role as well to support him, which meant the formation sort of changed to a 4-2-3-1 formation, which is what we played last season. But in this game, we tried to stick with that 4-3-3 formation and that approach to the game. But because Ledley weren't really having that much of a game, it sort of evolved back to that original formation with McArthur trying to help him out. And McArthur did that anchoring role very well. And like Ledley, didn't really have that many chances to go forward, and I think that's just plainly because he was defending quite deep as well, and he didn't really have a threat on goal. Normally, he would, with his high press game, he'd try and get as close to players as he can, win possession back, which he didn't do in this game. But in other games, he's done that. He'll run at players, get the ball back, and then try and have a shot on goal or find a pass. And if he had done that in the game, he probably would have had a better game. But in saying that, out of sort of the defensive players or the defensive-minded players in the game, he certainly was the best, because he had a few nice passes here and there. He had a few nice tackles here and there. And yeah, I think he coped well with Leicester changing his tactics, but I think the pressure was a bit too much for him, which meant he couldn't express himself going forward as much as he would have liked to. Obviously, last but not least, the final player in our midfield three, which is Cabaye, who I am going to give a 7. Had a hand in most of the positive aspects of Palace's game and scored the side's only goal. Was a threat going forward, but also tracked back to defend. So obviously Cabaye here was a hot contender for the man of match award, because he had an absolutely superb game. The last few games he hasn't been playing, he's been coming off the bench and changing the games as an impact sub. In this game he had the chance to play the full 90 minutes and he had an absolutely fantastic game. Scored Palace's only goal, a lovely one touch finish, Zaha, lovely low cross into the area. Cabaye didn't think twice, just hit the ball right into the bottom left hand corner. So he scored our only goal, and a lovely one touch goal that was. And he was Palace's best threat going forward. Yes, we had the wingers going forward and we had Benteke in the middle, but we had Cabaye just behind them, sort of supporting them, supplying them, as well as them giving supply to him, and that ultimately led to us having quite a good game offensively. We weren't very good defensively, and that's why we conceded 3 goals, but offensively we were very good, because the likes of Zaha and Townsend were running down the wings, getting crosses in for Benteke, but on a few occasions when Benteke might drop back a bit more deeper, Cabaye was able to run into that role, and ultimately that led to him scoring, because he saw the run of Zaha. Zaha crossed the ball in and he ran straight onto the ball, one touch finish into the goal. So we're seeing a class performance from Cabaye there, and he had a hand in the most positive aspects of Palace game, which was the attacking, and that was the positive aspect of Palace's game, was the fact that we were fantastic going forward. And I think Cabaye was crucial to that, because he was very positive in the way that he played. He tried to get forward as much as he could, but also on a few occasions he tracked back, which meant that the likes of McArthur and Ledley, who didn't have the best games, he was able to help them out. And I think it was an absolutely outstanding performance from Cabaye. Put the goal aside, before the goal he had an absolutely fantastic game as well. Like I said, most positive player, kept going till the end, and ultimately that sort of I can't think of the word, aspiration, let's say, to go and get a goal ultimately led to him getting the goal, because he kept going till the end, saw the cross of Zaha and thought, well, I want to try and get a goal, and he got the goal, and it was a well-deserved goal. But ultimately I think it's a well-deserved 7 for him, and he is a hot contender for man of the match. So if you do continue to listen on to the podcast, you'll see why I put him on the shortlist. But like I said, I keep repeating myself, but it was an absolutely outstanding performance. He was by far Palace's best player. He was very good offensively and offensively, but also had that positive impact on the side. And I must mention that him and both Zaha, who the next player I'm going to talk about were in the Premier League Team of the Week. So this is based on Opera stats, stats of about tackling, chances created, assists, things like that. And both Zaha and Cabaye got into the Premier League team of the week. So congratulations to them 2 players, and I think they fully deserved it. Yes, we lost the game, but actually, if you look at the stats and stuff behind it, we created so many chances, and it was mainly due to, you know, Cabaye and Zaha, and ultimately they fully deserve being in the team of the week. And I'll go on to talk about what other team of the week Zaha is in, and that obviously leads me nicely onto him. Obviously, Zaha playing in the front 3 formation, which consisted of Wilfried Zaha on one wing, Christian Benteke on the other, and Andros Townsend on the other wing as well. So obviously Wilfried Zaha, who I am going to give an 8. With performances like this, Zaha deserves international recognition. He made Danny Simpson's job an incredibly difficult one, with runs of power, skill and pace. A very nice assist for Cabaye's goal. So before I go on and talk about his performance, I'll sort of give to you what other team of the week he is in. So obviously I've already said he's in the Premier League team of the week based on Opera stats, and very well done for him. You know, I think he got a 9.5, whatever it was, and that was ultimately just because of his attacking threat, the fact that he got crosses into the area, the fact that he made runs, created chances, all of that meant that he got a really high rating and was in the Premier League team of the week. But the thing that really surprised me, because I know he had a good performance, but I never expected him to make it onto this list, he was actually in the European team of the week as well. So obviously, based on Opera stats again, he had the highest rating for a winger, or a left winger, this weekend, and only made into the European team of the week. So that is actually a really amazing achievement, and once again a 9.5, one of the highest rated players this week out of any of the European teams. So well done to him. And like I said, I've said it already, but it was mainly because of, you know, chances created, the fact assists, the fact how, I can't think of the word, I think it's how many take-ons, that's the word, how many take-ons the player has. But ultimately he had a fantastic game and fully deserves that. But obviously, like I said, with performances like this, there's no way he can't be in, you know, in the line to be in the England team. He's putting in solid performances week in, week out. He's attacking, he's cutting inside, having shots, getting crosses in, you know, doing all of this what you would want of a winger. And certainly he does deserve international recognition. I don't understand why he doesn't play for England, because I think that's someone we need. Yes, Sterling is a very good winger, Theo Walcott is a very good winger as well, but they sometimes go missing in games. But Zaha is constantly performing, and hopefully I would like to see him, you know, in the England squad, because I think he's got a lot more to offer than someone like Sterling, because quite a lot of the time Sterling goes down the byline, does fantastically well to get past the player, but then he has no end product. He doesn't cross the ball in, he doesn't try and cut inside, he just stops and ultimately loses possession. Whereas Zaha's someone with a little bit more physicality, who when he runs down the wing, he can hold a player off, try and cut inside, or try and get a cross in, which ultimately there is 2 main aspects of his game, you know, the fact that he can cut inside and the fact that he can cross, and that's what England need. And I don't see why he doesn't get into the English squad. But obviously, Danny Simpson isn't the fastest player. Zaha is one of the, I think he was ranked 7th fastest player this season in the Premier League. So it just shows you, you've got a fast player running at a very slow player, and he made it a very difficult job for him. And he had lots of power, like I said, physicality, a lot of skill, you know, the fact that he can cut inside, a bit of tricks to get past players, and obviously his pace as well. And the one thing about his whole performance, which just topped it off like the cherry on top of the cake, was the assist for Cabaye's goal. You know, that's what we deserved. He kept going for the game. He didn't stop, you know, putting his high pressure on throughout the whole game. Didn't stop right to the end, and then he got rewarded for that lovely assist. And I think his 2 or 3 assists now he's on for this season. So once again, that's why he should be in England squad, because he scored a goal, but also he's creating chances for other teammates as well. But, you know, the fact that he was able to find Cabaye in that space, put the cross in, just topped off the game for him. But like I said, Premier League team of the week and European team of the week, I think we can safely say that Zaha fully deserves his 8, and certainly, you know, the England manager's got to try and consider him for the England squad now, because he done very well. And another thing to add, I would like to thank Wilfried Zaha for helping me to retrieve my fantasy team, because I was lagging behind in my school league, but I've clawed it back to about 10 points now, because I put the captain on Zaha, and he got me 12 points. So well done, Wilf. You've saved my fantasy team. Hopefully next week as well, you can have a very solid game. And once again, with you being the captain, you can get me a few more points so I can keep on climbing up the league. Obviously, moving on to the striker, Christian Benteke, who I'm going to give a 6. Had a chance and hit the bar. Another one cleared off the line and should have made more of a through ball from Zaha. He'd be disappointed with his performance. So obviously Christian Benteke, the reason I've given him a 6 is, although he was fairly quiet throughout the game, he did have glimpses of absolute class. You know, he had a chance where he hit the bar. We know he's very good at headering, A lovely cross there from Martin Kelly, but his spatial awareness to make sure he timed his run right, to make sure he got the right height on it, was superb. And he was just really unlucky that it hit the crossbar, and that from the rebound, we couldn't do anything of it as well. And obviously late on in the game, in the second half, I couldn't give you a minute, but maybe let's say the 70th minute, a corner came in from Palace. He managed to jump higher than any of the players. Again, like always, timed his run very well, timed the jump very well, got it absolutely perfect, headed the ball in. It was going in, but if it weren't for a player on the line, you know, it would have gone in, but it got cleared and we couldn't do anything else with that rebound. And obviously a through ball from Zaha. Like I said already, the reason Zaha was in these team of the weeks is because he was providing for his other teammates. He was the best attacking threat, and obviously Benteke didn't quite take advantage of that. You know, he had a lovely through ball from Zaha. He could have done better with it, but we know that his main aspect is that, you know, from crosses, headering them in. We know Benteke hasn't got the most pace, and I think that's why he couldn't do anything with this opportunity, because it was one-on-one with the player. He could have gone round the player, but his pace meant he just got bullied off the ball because he weren't really able to get past the player. But in saying that, he'd be disappointed with his performance, but certainly he showed glimpses throughout the game of he didn't let his standards drop, because like I said, his headering, he had 2 or 3 headers cleared off the line. He had a chance where he could have gone through and goal. So certainly he is, although he had a alright game, he didn't do anything spectacular, he still had chances where he could have showed his absolute class. And certainly I think a 6 is fully deserved for him, because it weren't like he had a terrible game, because he was still providing for the team, still giving his all to the team, and was very unlucky on a few occasions. Obviously it moves me on nicely on to the final player of our 4-3-3 formation, and that is Andros Townsend, playing on the right wing this game, and I am going to give him a 4. And you know, it wasn't his best performance, but Palace expect more from the England international. He needs to be more willing to create opportunities rather than giving them to himself. At times in the game he gave needless passes, and his standard shot would have been more effective. So like I said, dear, you know, a few weeks ago I said that Townsend, you know, he needs to be sharing his opportunities more. You know, he needs to be more caring and not be, you know, taking the chances himself. And in this game he did do that a lot more. You know, he did find a pass or a setback rather than having a shot himself. And ultimately he's got to try and find the balance right, because yes, I said that he needs to be sharing the ball, giving the ball to other players more, but then he's got to do the opposite as well. He's got to make sure that when he has a run, if he thinks he can try and have a shot and curl it into the top corner, then maybe he has to try that. And that's what was lacking in this game, because yes, other games before he hogged the ball too much and didn't give the ball away, but in this game he gave the ball away too much, and then that meant that he couldn't do anything spectacular. And that's why I gave him a 4, because he didn't really do anything throughout the game. He didn't do his normal running down the wings, he didn't put in many crosses, and ultimately that led to him having a really bad performance. But like I said here, at times in the game it would have been better for him to take the chance himself and cut inside and have a shot, because, you know, there wasn't a player there for the pass, but instead he'll pass it back to the defenders. So he's got to find the balance right. And yes, I've already said this, but I know I've slated him before for hogging onto the ball too much, but then sometimes it is alright to hog the ball, because that way you're keeping possession for the team, and that way you can wait for players to come in and then put your cross in or then have your shot. But, you know, he needs to find the balance, like I said, and if he can do that, I'm sure he can become an even better player. But certainly probably Palace's least effective player, because he didn't really have that much impact on the game. And certainly we do expect more from him, because we know he can cross the ball, we know he can pass the ball, we know he can shoot and get them curling efforts into the top corner. We've just got to see that more now, and hopefully he can get the balance right in the upcoming weeks. Obviously that finishes my 11 players, the starting 11. So if, like I said at the beginning of this section, if you do want to comment below the video with all of the players 1 to 11, as well as the substitutions, and give them ratings 1 to 10, please do, because then we can compare our own opinions. Obviously the 3 substitutions for Palace were Fraser Campbell, Chung Lee and Zeki Fries, none of which are going to get ratings this week, because none of them were hardly on the pitch for long enough. But obviously Fraser Campbell, he came off for Townsend and didn't make much difference. Chung Lee put in a few dangerous crosses, had a shot from outside the area which did come close to going in the top corner. And obviously Zeki Fries as well provided a little bit more mobile stability at the back, at fullback, when he replaced Kelly. He was also a threat offensively. So just to touch on them a little bit, Fraser Campbell came on the pitch, didn't have much impact at all, and lots of Palace fans were angry at the fact that Fraser Campbell came on, because they would have rather had someone like Wickham up front, because he's a much more physical presence and would have been able to get on the end of crosses a bit more, and you know, we know he's got a powerful shot, so it would have been better to bring him on. Obviously Chung Lee, he came on, like always, an absolute fantastic substitution. Came on, changed the game, changed the tempo of the game, up the tempo quite a lot, putting a few decent crosses into the area. Benteke almost got on the end of a few of them. You know, he created chances, finding passes, and also had a shot from outside the area, almost identical to the one he scored against Stoke last season. Obviously, instead of it being on from the right flank, he done it from the left flank. Had a shot, almost went in the top corner. So if you're talking about impact sub, Chong definitely had an impact on the game because he came on the pitch and changed the game up a bit more by providing more chances, creating chances as well, but also having a chance of his own. And I think Chong Lee, when you compare it to someone like Townsend, you know, that's what you want from a player. You know, Chong Lee likes to have a shot from distance, which, yes, he does very well, but sometimes he gets the balance exactly right. Sometimes he knows when to pass it, he knows whether to cross it, and he knows whether to shoot himself. So if Townsend can learn off someone like Chong Lee and get that balance right, I'm sure that both players can become even better, because if you get that balance right, you can find the right opportunities to score, then that way you're going to create more opportunities for your team. And obviously Zeki Fries is a player I touched on who I personally would like to see start against Liverpool. You know, he provided a bit more stability at the back when he played at fullback. He was much better than Kelly, obviously. Where he was faster, he could deal with Mahrez much better. You track him back more because he can actually keep up with him for pace. And also he was a threat offensively. We know that Zeki Fries has got a lovely, powerful left foot, unlike Kelly, who has he's a right-footed player playing on the left. So obviously, Zeki Fries used that left foot to his advantage, got a few crosses in, nothing come to it, but he showed why he's such a talent offensively. But you know, he was a lot more solid than Kelly at right back or left back, and I certainly would like to see him start against Liverpool, because I think that I think that balance from offensively and defensively work from Zeki Fries will ultimately give more to the team, because it means we can create chances as well. But also, Liverpool have got some very fast players, so very similar to the likes of Mahrez and the other players at Leicester. So I'm sure that Zeki Fries, if he plays against Liverpool, he'll be able to track the players down like he did against Leicester, because Liverpool have got some fucking fast players, and I'm scared for the game against Liverpool because they are on fire at the minute. But if we bring in someone like Zeki Fries who can defend and keep up with these players, I'm sure that we'll have a very good game indeed. Well, obviously all the substitutions came on the pitch and, you know, up the tempo of the game. But, you know, they are all the players. Obviously they were the substitutes, but also the starting 11. Overall, it was an alright team performance. I think, looking at the players, we were much better offensively than defensively. Obviously, we scored the one goal, which was fantastic. But also, defensively, we lacked a bit of composure. You know, we let a few chances slip. You know, well, we missed a few tackles. That meant, and we got punished by that because Leicester scored. So, in the game against Liverpool, we want to see a better, more consistent game from all of the team. You know, we want to continue seeing our talent we've got going forward, but also we know what talent we've got at the back, so we need them to perform much better than they did against Leicester City. But overall, I think it was an alright team performance, and I think the scoreline wasn't a fair reflection on the game itself. Now to move on to my man of the match award. Before I do that and give you my man of the match and who I thought had the biggest influence on the game, I'm now going to give you the results of my Twitter poll. So like I said, most weeks, if you do want to vote in this week or next week's Twitter poll, do follow me at the CPC podcast so you can vote on there. And obviously do give me a follow as well, because I do post all the latest news on there. So if you do want to keep up to date, do follow both my own account, which is at the CPC podcast, and obviously at eCrystal Palace. So if you do go on the eCrystal Palace website or on their Twitter account, you won't see the poll. So you do have to give me a follow there so you know when the poll comes out, and that way so you can have your voice heard. But obviously the 4 nominations for this week's man of the match award for the game against Leicester City were James McArthur, Yohan Cabaye, Wilfried Zaha and Christian Benteke. So obviously I'm going to give the results of them. Obviously starting in last place with 9% of the votes was Christian Benteke. In third place with 10% of the votes was James McArthur. In second place and runner-up this week with 29% of the votes was Yohan Cabaye, and which means the winner of this week's man of the match award for the game against Leicester City, who had an absolutely stunning performance, was Wilfried Zaha with an outstanding 52% of the votes. So over half of the people who voted in this Twitter poll did vote for Wilfried Zaha. So congratulations, Wilfried. You don't get a trophy or certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was a very solid performance by you. And I'll go on to talk about what else you earned this week. But like I said there, if you do want to vote in next week's podcast, do vote on the Twitter poll, which isn't run by Equals Palace. It's run by my own Twitter account, which is at the CPC Podcast. Go on there, vote for who you thought had the biggest influence of the game, and obviously get your voice heard in next week's Man of the Match award. But obviously now I'm just going to go through why I've put each of the nominations on here. And obviously, who I personally thought was the overall man of the match. Obviously, starting James McArthur, the reason I put him on there is because out of sort of the midfield three players, he was probably one of the better defensive players. Bearing in mind that Cabaye was playing in the midfield three, but playing more attacking. McArthur was by far the best defensive player, you know. He'd try and make as many blocks as possible. He'd try and, you know, be the anchor role in the club, in the team, by making sure that the defence had cover, and he'd done that very well. And yes, he wasn't really effective going forward, which he normally is, but I think the reason he stayed back is just to help Joe Ledley, who was probably a bit tired. And I think McArthur had done that job very well. And yes, he didn't go forward, but what he was doing defensively was very good as well, and that's why I've put him on there. And like most of the players, his work ethic is why I've put him on there, because he doesn't stop till the end. He keeps going, even though he may feel his fitness isn't that good. He keeps going till the end, and that's why I've put him on there, just as a reward for his hard work. And obviously, Johan Cabaye and Wilfried Zaha, I am going to link these in together, because both players, or I say both players made it into the Premier League Team of the Week, which is based on Opera stats. So obviously I believe that Wilfried Zaha got about a 9.5 and Johan Cabaye got about an 8. So, you know, although we didn't win the game, these guys put in solid performances to actually get really high ratings. And I think the ratings are based on things like chances created, take-ons, completed take-ons, assist, goals and stuff like that. And I think, you know, it's fully deserved that these players do get on the list, because you look at the result and you think, well, these players obviously didn't have a good game because we didn't win the game. But if you actually look at the stats and look how they performed and look at the players' individual performances, all of these players done very well. Obviously, Johan Cabaye playing that sort of more advanced role than he would normally do than his defensive role. He got the goal, which is a fantastic one-touch goal. He was able to be aware of the cross from Zaha, timed his run perfectly, so he ran onto the ball, one touch, nutmegged the defender. You know, the ball went into net, so a fantastic goal there. But obviously, throughout the game, he was an attacking threat, you know, supplying the ball, lovely crosses into the area, a few decent deliveries from corners. So all of that, a fantastic game. And obviously, if you do want to listen back to the player rankings, because I went into a lot of detail there. But, you know, both Zaha and Cabaye just had absolutely phenomenal games, you know. Cabaye, you know, he's come into the squad, obviously been on the bench the last few games, has come on as a sub, been a massive impact, and he's carried that form on to when he was starting in the team, played a full 90 minutes, and by far was one of the better players on the team. And I think he fully deserves getting second place. You know, some people may say he had a better game because he was more consistent throughout the game with his passing, his shooting, and things like that, but certainly he had a very good game. And, you know, one thing I don't think I mentioned is the fact that he had a shot from outside the area. You know, quite early in the game, he got the ball, picked it up on sort of the edge of the area, had a long shot, nice curling effort, and almost went in. So, you know, it shows that he gets the balance right. You know, whether it will be he needs to find a pass, or, you know, chip the ball over to a player, or whether it will be he takes a shot, and he got that balance right, and fully deserves being on here. And obviously, Wilfried Zaha, this man had an absolutely phenomenal performance. He fully deserves his 9.5 on the Opera stats, and I only gave him an 8. So, you know, the stats, if it's based on stats, he deserves, you know, a 9, maybe even a 10, because he was absolutely phenomenal. And obviously, like Cabaye, he made it into the Premier League Team of the Week, getting about a 9.5. So that was obviously chances created, take-ons, assists, goals, and things like that. And yes, he didn't score a goal, but, you know, he almost scored one, a shot. He almost assisted Benteke with a lovely through ball. He obviously assisted Cabaye by getting that lovely, decent cross in. So, you know, he had a fantastic game. But the main thing I want to talk about is that this weekend he had the most take-ons of any other Premier League player. So he's beat the likes of Aguero, Payet and Walcott. So he had 8 take-ons in the Premier League, and obviously Aguero had 7, and Payet and Walcott had 6. So it's just showing that he's up there with some of the best attackers in the league. The fact that he can take players on, get past them, and he's done that very well, you know, in this game. He was able to cut onside on a few occasions, get crosses in, and obviously ultimately got that lovely assist for his goal. But the thing that really surprised me, and I think most people may disagree with it, but once again, based on Opera stats, he made it into the European Team of the Week. So that just shows what an absolute classy player is. And once again, it was for a 9.5 rating. He got into that one. He was the best winger in Europe, or the best left winger in Europe this whole weekend. So it just shows how good he is. And I don't understand why he isn't in touching distance of the England squad now, because if he's putting in performances like this, where he's beating the likes of Aguero, one of the best strikers in the world, he's beating the likes of Payet, who's one of the best wingers slash cams in the world. If he's beating players like this for stats, I'm not sure why he isn't getting into the England squad. But once again, it was just absolutely phenomenal performance from him. You know, the fact that he can take players on, the fact that he's got his pace and tricks, he get past players, create chances, all of that just led to him with an absolutely phenomenal performance. And, you know, I never thought I'd see a player being rated one of the best in Europe, but this weekend he was one of the best in Europe, and obviously leads me nicely on to Christian Benteke. He is one of the players that, you know, you want to put 4 nominations on there, so you've got to debate about who to do it. And the reason Benteke is on there, he had a very quiet game, but the fact that the chances he had, the fact that he hit the crossbar with one of his headers, the fact that he had a header cleared off the line, the fact that he almost had a chance from a Zaha cross, through ball. So the fact that he had these chances, yes, they were fantastic saves or blocks or the crossbar in that instance. You know, he's still showed his class throughout the game with his headering ability, and that was an asset to us. You know, Zaha playing absolutely phenomenally well, like I said. He was getting crosses into Benteke, and Benteke was taking advantage of that as well. So once again, players linking up well to have an overall good performance. But certainly, all of these players had a lot to add to the team. Obviously, MacArthur was a lovely anchor and defensive player in the team. Cabaye was the lovely playmaker in the team, making chances. Zaha was the best player by far at using his skills, pace, to get past players, obviously take-ons and creating opportunities. And obviously Benteke was the best player at actually using the opportunities to score. But all of these players fully deserve it. And obviously my man of the match, I think it's clear, if you're on the European team of the week and you're in the Premier League team of the week, obviously Wilfried Zaha is going to win it. So congratulations, Wilfried. You don't get a trophy or a certificate, but you do get my sincere congratulations on what was a very outstanding performance. But yeah, it was a fantastic performance by you, Wilfried. And hopefully, if you carry this on, there's no way that they can't put you in England squad, because the way you're performing at the minute, you're outdoing players like Aguero, Payet and Walcott on take-ons, and that's something that, you know, England need. They need a player who can take players on. So now you've heard my match report, player rankings and my man of the match. That concludes this week's podcast. Now I've got an exclusive interview with Alan Pardew and Johan Cabaye following the game.
Yeah, and 3-1 the scoreline today, but what did you make of the team's performance?
We lost the game, so it's hard to say we played well. But I think a couple of occasions we've done well. We create some chances to score, but at the end we lost again, and that's the most important. So now we have to just learn from our mistakes and move on.
And you got the goal today. You're playing a bit further forward. Do you enjoy playing that position?
Yeah, of course, it's always good for my feeling my mind to be on the score sheet, but yeah, I would prefer that score to get something for the team. But I enjoy my position higher on the pitch and try to create something. We've got good players, fantastic players, and we could do something good for the next matches, but we know we have to just work hard as a team to win games. If not, we are in trouble like today.
For you, you started pre-season obviously a lot later because of the Euros. Did that make it a little bit more difficult at the start of the season?
Yes, but I can't complain. I was with my national team this summer, so I can't say anything wrong. But yeah, it's difficult because the other lads worked really hard for maybe 3-4 weeks. The other pre-season trip, and they could work really hard to get fit. Me, I came back later, and I had to work hard, but more shorter. So my fitness is coming back, and I'm feeling much better on the pitch than a few weeks ago.
And finally, just looking at the team's overall style of play, it's changed a bit this season, a lot more possession-based, playing it around. Do you think that suits your style of play?
Of course, I think with the player we got, we have to keep possession more than we did. We just have to keep confidence and on the ball, keep relaxed, keep calm, and play short passes with movement. We've got fantastic players everywhere on the pitch, and we can do some good match, a good game. But we just have to work together and play as a team.
Alan, team started really well today. Do you think the scoreline maybe didn't reflect the good play that your team had?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. We played some good stuff today, played okay. Our final moment in the first sort of 65 minutes just let us down. We had great situations and we didn't capitalise, whereas they did. Their end product, their final shot, their final moment was better than ours, and that's why they had a lead on us. The third goal was exceptional. That just took the game away from us a little bit. But we started so well. Should have perhaps scored. So unlucky to hit the angle of the bar. I'm not disappointed with the team today. I think they played a good game. But Leicester are very difficult to beat at home. I think a year unbeaten here, and it's why they got so much pace and quality and power. And we struggled at times today. Our fans were great, and we had loads here today. I want to thank them for that support. And I think they would have gone home thinking that we give it our best today, but it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, their keeper had a lot of saves to make, and especially right at the end, the team carried on creating chances. Do you think that shows the good spirit there is in the dressing room, that they carried on right to the end?
Yeah, and we deserved a goal, and there was no doubt about that. But as I say, we had great situations in that first 20 minutes when we dominated the game, and it's not easy to dominate the game here. And we just couldn't create a great moment other than Christian's header, and that was a shame. And that probably is where the game swung, because the end of the first half they come on strong, and we struggled to hold on to them for a little period.
So there you have it. Now you've heard what Alan Pardew and Johan Cabaye had to say after the game. That concludes this week's podcast for the game against Leicester City. But make sure to come out next week for our post-match review of the game against Liverpool. So thanks for listening, and remember to up the Palace.